Whoa, this is getting rife, isn't it? It's CrossFit over. Woke up to this on Monday morning, I think it was, CrossFit Mayhem Nation email. CrossFit is over. I was like, damn, what have they done now? And then started off the email with good morning. Well, I was like, really, it's not, is it? You've just blooming given me a bit of heart attack.
Oh, boy!
This week, there's been a lot of debate on a couple of different social media outlets that is CrossFit dying? You have to pay for some of the social media outlets, and I don't have the subscription. So basically, I did my own digging. First off, in the Mayhem Nation email, it said, CrossFit has been a game changer in the world of fitness, but it has been shifting. We found something intriguing. Google searches for CrossFit and CrossFit affiliated gyms have declined in 2023 compared to previous years. Fewer people are seeking CrossFit related content and information, whilst more CrossFit gyms are closing their doors than new ones opening. Negative growth, a trend that's concerning.
Now I'm panicking.
Don't panic.
No, I am, because I'm going to lose my job.
So, is it really dying in terms of trends? I went on to Google and went on to Google Trends, which is like how much and how often something is searched for. And we started off with CrossFit. Let's find out the news. And well, searches for CrossFit since July 2013 have been on a down, although they were consistent to probably 2017. This scale, by the way, is the number represents the search interest relative to the highest point in the chart for a given region and time. A value of 100 is peak popularity, the most amount of searches ever for that term on Google that day, that time. Score of 50 means it's half as popular as it was at its peak. So looking at this graph, really, since 2019, it's been at half popularity. That's actually where the CrossFit Games are and where the Open is. You can see that like during the Open and the Games. But even with those searches since 2019, it hasn't been half as popular on Google as... This is just facts. But this is where it gets really kind of
juicy.
Interesting. Ready? The actual peak popularity of the CrossFit Games being searched was in 2018 over the 2018 CrossFit Games. Whoa. And then you can kind of see the drop off where COVID hit. And since then, it's been really trying to bounce back, as you can see with the graph, but it's just not. Now, you're thinking, oh, CrossFit Games, CrossFit. When you put them on a graph side by side, the popularity difference between CrossFit just being searched as a general term over the webs, like the interwebs, and the CrossFit Games probably makes up about a quarter of the actual searches, which I found interesting. I was like, mate, I expected the CrossFit Games searches to be, not as much as CrossFit in general, but to be close, especially during peak times, but nope. And then just for my kind of like, I don't know, how my brain works, I was like, maybe just let's compare it to UFC, another kind of fringe sport. UFC was kind of coming up at the same time as CrossFit was coming up. And they actually had the same amount of popularity and interest during January 2014. But since then, as you can see, CrossFit has just slowly curved off and the UFC has managed to stonks. And then I did this as well. I put the F1 on there. F1 actually had a lot more popularity than UFC and CrossFit throughout the whole time, but you can see there was kind of like a steady drop off. But then Formula One Drive to Survive hit and look at that peak at the end. Media, the big driver. Same thing with UFC. Media has been incredible, promotions, athletes. Which then brings me on to my next point, which I kind of figured out on this journey of having a look into statistics. If you look at the old school athletes, like the OGs, people call them the OGs a lot of the time, or the ones that have been in the sport for quite a recognizable amount of time, performed well, right? Jason Khalipa, 470,000 followers. Matt Fraser, 2.4 million. Dan Bailey, 602,000 followers. Noah Olsen, 846,000. Katrin, 1.7 million. Tia, 2 million. Brooke Entz, 1.5 million. Chris Spieler, 249,000. Josh Bridges, 792,000. Annie, 1.4 million. Rich Froning, 1.5 million. Laura Horvath, 431k. Lauren Fisher, 1.1 million. Pat Vellner, 630,000. That's just to, they're like people that have been in the sport for a decent whack of time, but were there during that blow up when CrossFit had the most interest. Think about it. Their followings are pretty huge. Compare that to what I would call the new school athletes. And of these, probably the biggest names that I'm going to say are Mal O'Brien, 739,000, Danielle Brandon, 711,000, Emma Lawson, 334,000. Arguably, those three are the three biggest names in the sport right this second, and none of them break that million barrier like CrossFit athletes have in the past. And then looking at other really notable athletes that are very well known in the space, Gabby Magala, 113,000, Emma Carey, 60,000. And then on the male side, Justin Medeiros, 545,000 for a two-time Games winning champ. Jeffrey Adler won the Games this year, 147,000. Jay Crouch, 50,000. Dallin Pepper, 5th fittest on earth, 53,000. Jason Hopper, 78,000. Nick Matthew with his massive squat, 56,000. You can kind of see a trend in followings too. Yes, they haven't had as much time to grow their profiles, but there is a vast discrepancy in the followings of athletes that are around, you know, the 2013, 14, 15, 16, and where they are now, 21, 22, 23, 20. Going into 24. Like some of these athletes that I named with the smaller followings have been around in the games for a decent while and they're very well known in the space, just not as big on Instagram. So if you look at all the statistics, yes, CrossFit is dying. And it's had a little bit of a spike after COVID, but it has not come back to life. The games this year was actually lower than the games last year. I saw that with my videos over the last couple of years. This past year, we had the best access, made 40, 50-minute episodes, and I thought they were incredible behind the scenes, and I put so much effort into them, and they didn't do as well as previous videos, which like, it does hurt, but you just gotta be proud of what you put out, you know? And it's just because of the interest at the moment in the sport. And also people may be bored of me, which I fully get. Like, speaking in all honesty, team, recently, like, you've probably seen us not traveling as much and creating as much content with athletes because it's not viable for us financially. Obviously, we'd be going to the big competitions like the CrossFit Games, but actually at the CrossFit Games, we made a loss. The view money didn't bring in as much as it cost us to go to the Games. And yes, probably some of you are gonna be like, yeah, you flew business to the Games. We actually found some amazing deals in the Christmas sale to go to the Games in business. And yes, between Jazz and I, we treated ourselves, it only cost us like £1,000 more to go business than in economy, and removing that £1,000, even if we flew economy, we still would have made a loss over the CrossFit Games, you know? So it's like, but enough of that. What's the solution is the question, and it's something that I don't really have the answer to, but I feel like I have a, you know, like an inkling of what could help. Media. Media portrays personalities. Personalities are what people want to tune in, support, and watch. Looking at the CrossFit Games YouTube, it's, for a multi-million-pound corporation, I would definitely be having 2 or 3 media teams and be showing off the different athletes every single week. Be with a different training camp. You know, we like don't get me wrong, it's cool to see Rich Froning race through 21:15.9 from 2014, but that's already up there. We want fresh stuff. And a lot of the stuff that they have on there at the moment is just highlights of events or just the tests that were at the CrossFit Games that they streamed. There's nothing like, you can see the athletes do amazing, but you don't get to know who the athletes are. And the thing is, to then understand an athlete and get to know them, really, you can't just do one video on them. You have to keep going back to them, building that relationship with the fan, with the person that's gonna wanna support them. And going further down the thing, it's just the tests from the semifinals, quarterfinals. Like, there's nothing that's like, this is the community of amazing people doing amazing stuff. Keep watching. Tune into the next one and see this dude do this and see where we're like. The reason why Drive to Survive was so successful in revamping F1 is because you got to know the drivers that were on the grid. Now, I fully understand that it is an expense to a company to send out a couple of media teams and keep rolling out videos, but I feel like the income back from that will be more people being interested in CrossFit, more people seeing it out there, more people wanting to get involved. And it's probably quite hard with the turnover rate of CrossFit athletes, and some people come in and go, some stick around for a long time. But again, people support athletes because they're great people, not because sometimes they're the best athlete in the world. It's because of their personality. So even if they don't perform like they were performing before, people are still gonna wanna, I mean, I'm sure a couple of you legends, for like, if CrossFit paid for your flights and your accommodation and gave you, you know, a little bit of cash to make some videos for your time, you'd snap their hand off to make some videos. They don't need a big production. Like, who remembers Road to the Games? Some of the sickest episodes. They got you hyped for the season. Imagine that on a broader scale. People will just continually watching. It's like UFC embedded. But then that takes me on to my second thought, is that CrossFit need to do more. Like, they need to have more events happening. Like, since the CrossFit Games, we've been sitting waiting for Rogue. And since then, like, there's been a different PGA competition on every other week. And there's been like 5 or 6 F1 races. Like, yes, of course, when we look at that graph at the start, there's going to be spikes over the Open, over the Games. There'll be spikes in popularity throughout the year, but what you want is eyes on it all the year. Events that people keep seeing and they keep wanting to come back and they're like, oh, what's gonna happen next week? That's why I think sanctional season was such a good thing in terms of like there was a games ticket on at each one of these events throughout the year, so it made a lot more people tune in. When there's a big cash prize, sometimes people will tune in, but they really like, people pay a lot more attention when they, you know, if you win, there's something bigger on the line in the future. That's my opinion, but maybe I might be wrong again. I don't know. Like the Invitational, that was cool. When they put like Europe against America against Oceania regions. I think there needs to just be more events. And like, I'm thinking off the top of my head, if you break that down and you have specialist events, you just have like this is off the top of my head because I'm like passionate about it, but imagine having a CrossFit Throwdown, okay? So it's like, it sets up in a town or a city on a one-day event, and in the morning, it's a barbell event, Grace. An hour and a half break, then there's a gymnastics test, and then an hour and a half break, and then there's a conditioning test, and then an hour and a half break, and then there's like a CrossFit Metcon. But they stay the same, so you can have world records in each, know what you're turning up and doing. I know that's against kind of the CrossFit principles, but I mean the multitude of things that you'll hit. And then people can get really competitive about it. They can train about it. It's kind of like high rocks at the moment. People know what they're getting themselves in for when they go to a competition and they can see themselves on the scoreboard against other people and compete on the day in what they know they're going to do. That doesn't take away from the CrossFit Games being the CrossFit Games, you know? I don't know. Also, I think the initial spike in the CrossFit, you know, like interest was when obviously something's new and you see people doing kipping chest to bar, kipping pull-ups, all of these different movements. You're like, wow, that's badass, what's that? And then you type it, and then obviously you have the people that stick around and go, that's cool, I want to do this. And now a lot of people already know about CrossFit, so they don't need to search it because they're doing some sort of functional fitness maybe themselves, or they're just like, nope, that's not for me. I don't know, team. I've probably rambled on for a little while. Please do in the comments let me know what you think. Obviously, if I find some really cool feedback or whatever, I will put that forward to CrossFit. I don't have like a direct line, but I have an email that of the CEO that maybe we can sit down and have a chat with and give your ideas. Let me know what you think. I don't think CrossFit's dying. I think there's a core audience of an amazing community of an amazing athletes and people, and it's a cool, kick-ass freaking thing. It just needs a little something different, just to kind of, everyone's eyes just to go again, you know? And let me know what that is down in the comments below. All right, legends, catch you in the next one.